Nice.
I think we're live. Hopefully I have the right, let me go to youtube.infinite.red. Exploring React Native Testing Library, Jamon, Holmgren, and Josh Justice. It appears that we are live. Just gonna verify that. Yeah, we're live. Awesome. We'll let some people kind of filter in here a little bit.
I could tell we were live because I accidentally had your Twitch page open in the background, so you were echoing about a second later.
Yeah. Yep. All right, there it is. And then I just need to bring up chat as well. So I have that. Hey, Derek. I see you. So a couple things here, Josh. You'll probably want to have either the YouTube or the Twitch stream open, but with, muted, just so you can see my screen and what's happening. And then obviously you still have Visual Studio Code, and we'll try to use like the terminal inside of Visual Studio so that VS Code, so that we can both kind of see it.
Sounds good.
How you doing, my friend? It's been a little while. I guess we did our podcast episode a little while ago.
Yeah, I've been doing well. It doesn't feel too long because I think it was yesterday I watched yours and Gant's talk.
Oh,
about,
yeah.
Reactathon in the park.
Yes. Yeah.
So yeah, it was great to get a recap from y'all about the state of React Native and all those future things that I haven't been able to keep track of.
Right. Hey, Chanman. Hey, Mazen. Mazen says, hey, Josh.
Mazen, good to I don't see you, but I'm glad you're here again, like when we were on the podcast.
And let's see here. Legal says, are we using Jest? Are we going to use Jest, Josh?
That's the way I roll, yeah. I tried. I'm an old timer, so I used Mocha back in the day, and then the Detox team was like, "You really want to be using Mocha? You could be using Jest." So yeah, that's when I went all in.
Yeah. Hey, Daniel, over on the YouTube side. Hey, Darren. Got some people filtering in here. Cool. Well, Josh, I feel like, did we meet for the first time? Was it before Chain React, or was Chain React sort of our first time meeting?
We might have interacted on Twitter a little bit,
probably.
But yeah, meeting at Chain React when I walked up to you and said that I didn't remember to look up how your name was pronounced, and then you explained it to me. So yes. Which is, I'm sure, not uncommon for you.
Yeah, it is. It's a good thing because my name is uncommon and I can generally find the usernames I want. But then yeah, obviously there can be some confusion. Cool. Well, Josh is what's your official title over there on Big Knowledge?
So yeah, my title is a principal architect. So it's one of kind of our high level engineering titles. I also have a role of web platform lead, which means that I get some time off of consulting projects to kind of think about strategy across our web team. And we include React Native underneath the web just because that's where the interest level tends to be. So yeah, just some sort of
that's very insulting
engineering leadership roles.
It's very insulting to all of us React Native engineers. You know that, right?
Yes. That's true. Well, I'm trying to get the mobile engineers on board. Flutter has come out and it's tempting them away, especially the Android developers. So yeah, I'm just trying to bring us all together.
Have you read my article about Flutter versus React Native?
Yeah, the title got me, so it suckered me in as intended. It was good though. It was great. It was helpful stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know who uses Dart either.
Yeah.
So I'm sure it's a great language. I like a lot of tools that have very low adoption.
Yep.
But JavaScript and React have a lot of adoption, and so it's pretty strategic from a business standpoint.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, like obviously use what you want, and hopefully it does what you need it to. I definitely, obviously, I'm not unbiased in this. I'm not at all. I'm very steeped in the React Native world, so I always have to caveat a little bit there.
Sure.
And then you taught a testing workshop at Chain React. Mazen was there actually, and probably some others that are in the audience as well. And I believe you taught React Native testing library back then. That was in 2018, something like that.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that was involved. I used some enzyme for React and for React Native kind of early on my time
Yeah.
on the platform, but by the time I was creating like online resources and then doing a workshop like that, I think React testing library and React Native testing library were already in place.
Yep. Cool. I have not used React Native testing library to any great extent. I've played around with it a little bit, but that's about it. So I'm really interested to get more of your thoughts. I want to get some. I actually have kind of a discussion around testing philosophy.
Yeah.
So there's I forget who said it. Was it Guillermo Rauch or whatever, the next guy, who said write tests, not too many, mostly integration or something like that. Now, partly there's a major disagreement about what integration tests mean. I don't even like the word, to be honest. I don't like to use the word. I sort of like, my favorite way to refer to tests is by the name of the library. So maybe you might adapt that. Write tests, not too many, mostly detox or something like that. But I don't know if you agree with that. And my level of how much I really have a strong opinion is actually not like, it's not as high as probably it could be. So what is your approach philosophically to this?
It's going to be hard to talk briefly, so please stop me. Please.
Hey, we got 2 hours to fill here. Just take your time.
There you go. There you go. Yeah, I mean, reading that blog post back in the day and Kenzie Dodd's kind of commentary on it, applying it specifically to the React world, I was like, ugh, like I was kind of like, because I mean, as you know, as we've talked a number of times, I came to React world through the Ruby on Rails world, and a lot of sort of traditional views to testing, kind of backend server-side code and things like that, and had inherited. I mean, it was really in the Ruby world that I saw how testing could work.
Yeah.
And I like, man, this works. Like, this allows me to deploy quickly, have high level of confidence. I love this. In that world, the test pyramid was really big. Where, I mean, setting aside the terms for the different types of tests for a moment, it's like you have more tests at a lower level, more isolated, and we could talk about reasons, and then fewer tests at a higher level as far as connecting more of your application together.
Yep.
And so that was my sort of assumption coming into things. And I think I found in the 6 years that I've kind of been moving around different platforms, back end, front end, mobile, React Native, I tend to bring a lot of baggage with me, is the phrase that comes to mind. That's probably more telling than I intend. But like, when I see something that works, it's like, cool. Like, I don't want to lose that just from, let me just think about something new. It's like, well, hey, this worked there. Let me try to apply that. And like, I hope that I'm willing to kind of change and adjust my approach when it's warranted by a new platform or a new framework or something like that. But I want to, my default is to continue to take the approach that I've taken and to try it out and see what happens.
Yeah.
So reading about like test pyramid, not so much. Many more integration tests, like all of the challenges, the concerns, the downsides to integration tests or tests that are more and more connected. Those are coming to my mind.
Yeah.
And something to take it real broad, something that I've seen a lot in the React ecosystem is there's sort of a non-conformism to it, as far as like, hey, like from the start, it's like we got our HTML in our JavaScript, like, and our CSS, let's throw it in there as well. And it's not necessarily meant facetiously, but like, there's not a lot of desire, like, hey, like let's question assumptions. And I just recently realized that I tend to be kind of a nonconformist as well. So when I bristle at React doing that, it's like, well, Josh, there's four fingers pointing back at you, So, but having given it a number of years now, React and React Native, worked on a number of different consulting projects in different contexts on both platforms. Okay, what's a good way to summarize it? I have a lot of openness. Like, I'm not going to judge somebody for doing something different. And it comes out of our consulting practice as well.
Yeah, that's true.
Infinite Red really seems to have a very similar philosophy to Big Nerd. So I imagine y'all be pretty similar. Like, we come in and we ask questions. Like, how are you doing testing? How are you doing React Native or whatever? Like, what's working for you and what's not? You know what I mean?
Absolutely. Yeah, that's
Yeah,
the
so
mature way to really approach any of these things, because as I've found, and I tend to get, um, as I get older, I realize how many perspectives I lack, and like the things that other people will find really important is based on real pain that they've felt, usually. And so like, until I've felt that pain myself, should I really be discounting it? Like that's kind of a bigger thing. By the way, Jose, thanks for joining. And Luis says, I've been using heavily for the last couple months. Great coincidence. So I think he's talking about React Native Testing Library.
very nice. So yeah, let me get back to actually answering your question, which is always something I have to remember how to do. What I found, a coworker of mine named Jeremy Sherman, extremely intelligent guy and experienced guy. When I was talking to him about like testing, like what's the deal with testing on the front end? He said, Josh, I think the difference is you're coming at it from a test-driven development perspective. And I was like, oh yeah. And it wasn't that I was saying like, oh, one must always do test-driven development.
Right.
Maybe I was doing that some other time.
Right.
But it was like the way I viewed any kind of test structure was coming out of that mindset.
Right.
And so I can actually illustrate this by two different projects that I've worked on.
Okay.
So one of them is two side projects of mine. I've been sharing about them recently. I actually live streamed them on Twitch. The second one.
What's your Twitch, just so that people can go follow you too?
Twitch.tv/codingitwrong.
Coding it wrong. I love that handle.
Yes.
It's awesome. All right.
Yeah.
Keep it rolling.
Evocative. Yeah. So we walked through, we built an Expo kind of hobby personal app on the stream.
Yep.
And in there, and this was actually, I was actually converting it from another front end framework. So backend was the same, rewriting the front end, very simple app. So it didn't take too many streams to do it. And so because of that, the thing is, I knew it wasn't going to change a lot. I knew it was feature complete. I've used this app. It's a link saving app. I've used it for years and years. I have all the features in it that I need. So I knew that things were not going to change very much.
Yeah.
So I wanted to put in tests so that I knew things were working. And especially because I want to keep my dependencies up to date. I mean, React Native, especially to keep things running on your device, you got to have the latest versions of libraries and latest versions of the frameworks. And so I set up mostly, we talk about the approach in details a little bit later, but I set up some React Native tests that were very deep. Like almost nothing was mocked. Everything was tested all together, like an entire React navigation screen tested at a time.
Right.
And so that was very integrated. That was very high up on the, towards the end-to-end end, towards the lots of integration end.
Right.
And that's all I needed for those projects because they're not changing a lot. And some of the things I'll talk about in a second that I like lower level tests for, they just weren't needed there. That gave me all the confidence that I needed for these side project apps.
Yeah, I like how you talk about confidence because that's really what it is. It's all about getting the confidence level that you need in order to, ship software without, like, we've all been in a position where we're pushing the publish button and we got a little trepidation, like, oh no, we're gonna break everything, and that's no fun to be in that position. It's much better to be like, okay, I ran the test, they all passed. That means at least that stuff's working, like at least that stuff's working. And when you're like, something broke, you add a regression test and whatnot. We got a question from Rizwan. How many tests should you write? Does using TypeScript keep type checking? So let's see here if I can. It gives clean code. So can we skip some tests if we're using TypeScript? That's actually a common. That's a common question, actually. And I do think that there are certainly a lot of tests that I used to write in Ruby where, and I think you were a Ruby dev too, right, Josh?
Yeah.
So, where we wrote those tests because we didn't have type checking. It was like, if I give this function the wrong type of data, what's it going to do? How's it going to react? That you don't have to do if you're using TypeScript, because TypeScript will hopefully pick up on that. So there are a class of tests that go away, but by no means is it exhaustive. It's just sort of like covering a chunk of those use cases.
Yeah, I was trying to get my thoughts together on this, and something you said really helped me there. So again, that Ruby bias, I'm like, hey, dynamic typing, like love it, that flexibility. I'm excited for us to get into some TypeScript together because I just haven't gotten a chance to use it on projects, but I'm looking forward to. But I got that bias, that nonconformist bias towards dynamic typing.
Yeah.
But recently, I mean, being on the consulting project I'm on right now uses TypeScript on the front end. They're moving towards sorbet for static typing within Ruby on the back end, and I absolutely think it's the right thing for them.
I have not used that.
Yeah, it's 150 engineers, so it hasn't made its way to me yet. I'm hoping to try it soon. But the thing that clicked for me, and I'm sure so y'all on the static type side are like, yes, that's what we've been saying for years, Josh, but it takes a little while for me sometimes, is the idea that, hey, you do test-driven development or just thorough testing. You test the functionality of your code, and that's really great. And the code's documentation. It's like, the tester documentation, it shows how this code is intended to be used.
Right.
But when you get a really large team, 100, 150 engineers, like where I'm at right now, that code can end up being used and stuff passed in that wasn't intended. Stuff that works for now, but then later with an unintended change, you weren't testing that specific type of object or data was passed in, and it starts to break and you didn't realize it. And so I think especially, it's not like this is the only time that static typing can be useful, but I think especially for large systems with a large number of people, it communicates outward to the rest of the application, like, hey, don't pass these other things in because those aren't covered by tests. Those aren't intended yet. And that's just something you can't, it goes in the opposite direction of automated tests. And automated tests, just as far as I'm seeing, can't communicate outward to the rest of the application in that way. So that was, I'll paste a blog post I did, my true confessions around openness to some static typing.
Nice.
And maybe that can go in the log there. But that was one of the points there.
Perfect.
Of when that kind of sunk into me.
That's awesome. He just posted it in the Twitch chat. So if you're on YouTube, you'll have to jump over there, but it's in his website, codingitwrong.com, and you'll be able to see that, that blog, post. That's awesome. I'm going to pull that up at some point.
I have one more answer I can about how many tests should you write?
Yes. I was going to ask about that.
Yeah. So that actually ties into the second half of what I was going to say earlier of when I do write more lower level tests. It's in systems that I anticipate a lot of change. And this includes my professional projects that I work on as we're working greenfield or converting something over from an old architecture to a new architecture. I'll tend to do more thorough tests, including more at lower levels. Certainly a lot of unit testing of when I have individual functions, things that are outside of React world. But also components at various different levels when there's more complexity there. I think about probably the most complex component we did on my last React Native app was a price slider, where it was a screen where you indicate, it was a real estate application, indicate what price range you're willing to work with. And people could slide, they could type in a price. When you clicked off of the price, we needed to automatically format that, and we had to think through, are we formatting as you type or afterwards? We got accessibility into there to get accessibility actions. And my coworker, Kate Dionisio, was working on that. She was the one who implemented it. And there was so much going on with the functionality and refactoring as we realized, like, oh man, to handle accessibility, we're going to need to do something different. To handle this approach to formatting the text, the internals, the sequence of events needs to change. And so testing that with React Native testing library at a lower level just allowed us, the test ran really quick. Maybe you made no scenarios in Detox where it's like, hey, once it's running, that works really fast there as well. And that's great too. But for us, knowing that we had the tools available to, like, hey, we want to cover all those paths in that component, to know that they're all operating, and just we were changing things around a lot, and it was very, it caught bugs all the time as we were refactoring.
Well, that's the acid test, is it catching bugs. Hey Ahmed, good to see you over on the YouTube side. Rizwan says I've been a sub of Coding It Wrong for quite some time, and also Infinite Red, so that's cool. Thank you, Rizwan, appreciate it. He asks, please talk about snapshot testing. Do we really need that? And unit test and Storybook for UI covers most of TDD, or does it not? That's
I'd be curious to hear y'all's thoughts on snapshot test in Infinite Red.
It varies within Infinite Red, and we give people a little bit of latitude. So Ignite includes snapshot tests by default, Storybook, story shots specifically, because we do use Storybook, and again, that's another question around do you use Storybook or not? But we let the primary developer on a project decide if they want to or not. I think that in some cases it can be helpful. Certainly the amount of effort on setting it up is nice, because it's just snapshot tests are really straightforward to set up. if you find yourself just running, -u to update it like every single time, and you just kind of like barely glance at it, then maybe you're not getting a lot of value there. If it's catching bugs, again, coming back to that, is it catching bugs for you? If it's not, I actually don't think it's important. I think it's actually actively harmful if it's not catching stuff for you. Like, don't put tests that never catch bugs. Like, don't do it. Like, it just doesn't make sense to me. It slows down your test suite, adds friction whenever you change something. That's my opinion, but I don't, again, have as strong of an opinion as maybe people might think on this.
Yeah, I really love how Rizwan said that as far as unit tests and then Storybook for UI. I mean, when I think about my approach to unit testing components, it's really about the behavior, the functionality.
Yeah.
Like when you got inputs like, user interaction or props passed in or data coming from a web service, what outputs come out? What is displayed on the screen?
Yeah.
Sometimes like a function is called to like send some data elsewhere, like Redux or something like that. And so it's like, let's test that, but not details of the markup or the component structure or anything like that, because you can test those details of the markup and component structure, but it doesn't get you the visuals. Storybook gets you the visuals. And if you use Storybook snapshot tests and you want to, even visual regression testing tools that I haven't gotten into, those are all on the visual side, but those are well suited for that. One thing I did get to use snapshots for the first time. I was working on the CLI tool to automatically generate. It's another Ignite competitor. I always have, every time we talk, I have another tiny little tool that helps me generate projects because I'm just so opinionated.
Yeah. I just need to get you on our stack, and then we'll be good.
It's true. I mean, maybe MobX State Tree, that might be the tipping point once I get into that.
Yeah.
So what I found was I was generating the README files for this, and based on the flags you set, are you on React Native CLI or are you on Expo? Are you testing or not testing? I wanted the README to include all the appropriate stuff and only the appropriate stuff.
Right.
And so I didn't have a good way to visualize that. And I wanted to make sure things like, I wanted not too many or too few line breaks as we were generating that content. And so using snapshots, I was just editing it today. Like, the snapshot helps me visualize what the output text is. It lets me know, you move something around and you insert an extra line break there. And so for something like that, like it was helpful, but not so much for React in my world.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense to me. And from my perspective, by the way, thanks Ahmed, and good luck on your exams. Hopefully those go well. And by the way, Norfeld says, hi all, Jamon and Josh are really great devs, so I've been looking forward to this. I appreciate that. That's really nice of you to say. Josh is much better than me, but I'll take the compliment. We've got Muhammad. I'm sorry if I mispronounced that. Appreciate you joining us there. Danny is here. He's the maintainer of React Native Storybook, so he's always been super helpful on my streams. And then Norfeld says, implementation testing can be toxic like Jamon fears. I'm very much into BDD, working with black box approach, so that'd be more like I would say probably like Appium or something like that would make sense along those lines. So then Luis says, something I felt in the past when adding tests into a project is that the setup for writing them was very generic, causing a lot of boilerplate to be needed for every high level test. That is true. And I think that does get in the way. Like if tests feels like you're writing a lot of boilerplate, you're going to be less likely to want to do it.
I would agree. This is actually a difference of using React Native testing library versus Detox.
Yeah.
So when you're running a Detox test or on the web, a Cypress test, it's your whole application running.
Yeah.
And so this might be the boilerplate that person was referring to as far as like got your providers and all the things that configure stuff.
Yeah.
So on my stream, I was building this Expo app. Detox isn't officially supported in Expo, and so I wasn't using it. I was just writing tests with React Native testing library. And those test a component. Now, your whole application is a component, but when they have native code, RNTL can't get into that. It needs to be just JavaScript. So I was setting up, I was writing what I call screen tests which is just one screen at a time.
Okay.
So each of my React navigation screens, I would put it all and try to get as much of that JavaScript code together to mock out as little as possible in those. But I found providers I had to set up. I had to put a provider for React Native Paper. I had to put a provider even for the screen dimensions library. I forget the name of the third-party library that provides good screen dimension change support. But I had to configure that and give it dimensions. And so those are things where it feels like, oh man, like this is not, I just want to test this screen.
Yeah.
But it's like, this is something interesting about tests. When you get to any lower level test other than application test, is they're revealing dependencies. It reveals that screen depends on some of these providers configured elsewhere. And that it's not a bad thing. I mean, those providers are needed to set those screens up that way.
Right.
I copied and pasted the setup in my small application. You can create functions that say, you know what, here's the providers that pretty much all my screens need. And so here's my function that's reused that sets up the React, those 3 or 4 providers.
Yeah.
So there are approaches you can take.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. Hopefully that helps kind of explain to some of you folks, around those different approaches. Let's see here. Danny says, I've been experimenting with the new interaction tests feature and test runner on Storybook Web, usable with React Native Web as well. Oh, interesting. That's more on the web side of things. Cool. Well, we're about a half hour into this already. So let's take a look at some code here. I'm going to go over to, this is a brand new view. So like within OBS, so hopefully this works out okay. Our faces are a lot smaller in this, and then we've got chat in between, and then we've got basically my whole screen here. So I'm hoping this works out okay. I'm gonna rearrange some things here. So this is an Expo app that I generated, but using Ignite. So it has the Ignite stack, and we're gonna be looking at, because we don't use React Native Testing Library in Ignite yet. So we're going to be looking at what it looks like to create some tests, and we may have to make some things a little more contrived to like, actually test some stuff. But I'm really curious about this. So React Native Testing Library, simple and complete React Native testing utilities that encourage good testing practices. It's put out by CallStack. It's based on React Testing Library, which was made by Kent C. Dodds. React Testing Library. And how well do they conform to each other? Are they actually, Josh, are they pretty similar? Like, can you just almost copy and paste tests across, or?
It's very much the same philosophy, but it's not identical.
Okay.
Even to the point, the example that I think about as I've been updating various teaching resources I have, React Testing Library uses this screen API so that when you render something, you don't need to assign the results to anything. You just say screen.getByText or something, and that screen object is just imported. You can use it anywhere.
Right.
React Native Testing Library, as far as I've seen, doesn't have that screen API. And so you still take the result of your render call and you assign it to an object, or often destructure it, which is the older approach that was used in React Testing Library. So that you pull out getByText or getByTestID there and things like that. So you will definitely recognize it. And all the testing philosophy, which is just what we've been talking about, the idea of just testing those inputs and outputs instead of any internals of component. That's all going to feel just the same. The encouragement towards testing things that are visible to users, including accessibility, rather than like internal IDs or anything like that. That's all there in React Native Testing Library, and it'll feel the same.
Awesome. Thanks, Josh. I appreciate that. Norfeld says, behavior-driven development. By black box, I mean you don't know how the internal of the component works. You only set the inputs and make expectations in the output and avoid mocking too much. Unit tests often end with implementation testing. Integration testing, like the screen testing that Josh is talking about, is a really good approach. Then you can change from Redux to MobX and still be sure that the basic functionality works and confirm the rest manually. Yeah, I think that is a good philosophy. I don't know, in a lot of cases, it's probably not quite as cut and dry as that, but I do like the general gist of that. Danny says, problem we had with the testing on React Native is needing to use a lot of testing IDs. It's just a little bit harder to kind of like filter through and find things. So this is testing library, but I'm going to look at React Native Testing Library and just Are you cool with me Josh, are you cool with me just like going through and installing this? Or do you have a specific way you want to go about this?
Yeah, that sounds great. And I'm happy to give suggestions as we go along of things that you could build to kind of show something new and interesting about testing. One thing, to go back to something I was saying earlier, are you using TypeScript? Because I would love to see how this kind of testing approach plays out in TypeScript, although I won't be able to help if we run into challenges. So
no problem.
That's the trade-off.
Yes, we are. We are using TypeScript. So
cool. We'll all learn together. Chat can maybe help us.
Perfect. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Norfeld says RNTL is more like the early React testing library.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
Cool. Additional React Native specific jest matchers. So you add this as well.
You can hold off on that if you want.
Oh, okay.
You could put it in. There's just a little bit of setup there as far as pasting that in the jest file. So I suppose we could go ahead. I do use those. But it's not too often that I need those assertions. But it's nice to pull in. So let's do it.
Okay. Sounds good. And then we'll have to add this to setup files after env in your jest configuration package gist. Okay, so we tend to, oh, never mind. I was going to say we tend to put stuff in our package JSON, but apparently we have a jest config here. Xstate.
Yeah, that'll plop in right after setup files as another entry in that top level object.
Let me make sure I grab the right thing here. So the preset's already React Native, I think, on, well, it's jest expo is actually what it is. So setup files after env, and then we have that. Okay. And then React Native preset, modern fake timers, known issue. So this is a preset, but it does say generally use React Native. So we'll ignore this for now.
Yeah, I remember that from my professional React Native project from recently, but it hasn't come up on my side project, so it probably won't come up today.
Cool. And then here's an example, but maybe you can kind of walk me through an example. So the app itself has a home screen with a button that is continue, and then we have this button just to demo Reactatron, which we sometimes, we pretty much always use when we're building. There's also a list, so you can kind of see what a list that pulls in from outside of from like an API, as well as thumbnails and stuff like that. And that's essentially it. That's included out of the box. We actually are working on a much more involved version of Ignite, but it's a little ways out before we'll be getting to that. So, and just for a project structure standpoint, we have an app folder with our reusable components. We have a config folder. We have internationalization. We have our MobX state tree models. We have our navigators, which is basically just one navigator and some utilities. We have our different screens, and we have API and Reactatron service, theme folder with some colors, palette, spacing, etc., and then a utilities folder for various other utilities. So that's kind of that. We do also have a test folder, which has our setup there, and I guess one test. And we co-locate, at least for now, we co-locate our tests. I'm not seeing them actually right here, but generally we'll co-locate our tests when we're building stuff. Cool. What do you want to implement first?
Yeah, I think we could start with testing the main screen. Maybe real quick first, though. I kept interrupting myself. I'm not saying something I wanted to say to plug this project that I've been doing. Can I do that real quick?
Yeah, please do. Please do.
Yes. And so this ties into some of the questions that have been asking about how you write about the number of tests.
Yeah.
So for a few years, I've been working on a project called Outside-In, Front-End Development, which is about test-driven development in React. And so I've actually just published it as an ebook. I'm going to give you the link.
Yeah, I'll pull this up just so people can see this.
Yep. This I'm sending. I don't know all these chats. That's the stream chat. I guess that's going to everybody, which is good too. You see that?
I think so. Yep. Let me throw this in there. So it's through Lean Publisher.
Yeah, it's through LeanPub.
LeanPub.
Yep. Yeah, so I've actually published this book as an ebook now, and it's available.
Nice.
And it's for React on the web. And that link that I shared there is $5 off this book. And so you get a little bit of a discount for watchers here. But so let me talk about how this relates to the testing we're talking about. So this will walk you through a test-driven development approach, and specifically an approach called outside-in test-driven development. This is an approach where your acceptance test or end-to-end tests work together with your lower level tests. And it actually answers that question for you of how many of each test do I write. I love having the answer from this process to help me know how much or how few. So in this approach, you'll write a higher level test like a Cypress test or a detox test to describe like one feature in the application where you say, oh, here's a user flow of accomplishing something they want to do. And then you write that test before the functionality is working. It will fail. And then every time you get a failure, you implement just enough functionality to get past the current failure. And so it steps you through adding one user interface element at a time. And then what happens is when you find that when you have something trivial, like, oh, I just need some text on a screen, you just add that text. But when you find you have something more complex, like, oh, here's a complicated form I need to implement, then you say, well, I just don't want to slap that in. I really want a form component. And then what you'll do is you'll step down to a lower level test. Notice I'm avoiding the phrase unit test, but a component test for that, and say, well, okay, let me specify in more detail how this component works. And then as you do that, you're going through the happy path. So that, because again, you're still at the lower level, you're test driving out only enough functionality to get that end-to-end test pass.
Nice.
So that in the end, you'll have the happy path working. And after that, you say, okay, well, what do I need to do? Like, I need to handle some errors. I probably want some loading states as well. Maybe there's some styling that I want to do, some interaction, so different edge cases. And those things, well, the behaviors like loading states, error states, you would write lower level tests to do that. And what that does is that way your end-to-end test isn't cluttered up with a lot of details like that. You can just see, oh yeah, the user goes there and does that, and there's the result. And that all those edge cases that can you can find, without this approach, you can find yourself saying, well, it'll be too slow. I don't want to test the edge cases. They'll probably be fine. Or you do test them all, and then your test suite is slow, or your end-to-end tests are cluttered up. And so this allows kind of both of those to work together. And the last thing I should say about the value of those lower level tests, and you connected it in our earlier conversation, Jamon, in a helpful way. Sometimes I think about like, oh, it's about more than just catching bugs in tests. But it's about supporting refactoring. And this is one of the big things that the book emphasizes. And you can see this in the free intro chapters that are about the theory of testing, where it talks about like, hey, like if you have confidence that the changes you make in your code, your tests will catch if something goes wrong, you will improve the code much more readily. Do renames, move things around, like extract a child component or a helper function, and then your test will pass. Even your RNTL test will run really quickly, and you know that everything's still good. And yet, I've put that in a separate category, but you drew it together, Jamon, when you said, like, it's catching bugs. Like if you want to make changes, you want to move things around. Oh, I'm going to have a bug unless this test catches it. Those tests are still working to catch bugs as well, but they're allowing you to avoid big cluttered code that's hard to work with by refactoring as you go. And so for me, that's what really drives me to go way back to what I was saying about my coworker Jeremy. What drives me to have more lower level tests and to really shoot for a very high degree of coverage of my logic is the desire to do that refactoring, so that I can always clean up the code and have the code in the optimal form so that it's the easiest to work with and easiest to maintain. When you're not taking that approach, then like there's very little need for those lower level tests, just like my side projects where I'm not going to be doing a lot of refactoring. But the more you slide over towards like, we're going to do a lot of refactoring, we're going to be figuring things out and restructuring things as we go, just like my price slider I was talking about. The lower level test coverage is really helpful to really support you for that refactoring. So folks can learn more about the book. The book, to clarify, the book is web related. So if you work on React on the web, that'll be interesting. But I am interested to hear from folks. I'm thinking about what React Native content people would be interested in. So I'd love for folks to reach out to me if you'd like to see more React Native testing content and React Native test-driven development content. Love to hear from folks.
Definitely do that. Go buy that book, link.outsidein.dev/rnlive. You'll get $5 off. And Josh is awesome at teaching this stuff. That's why we had him at Chain React. We're hopefully going to have him back at some point when Chain React is back to teach testing again. I know you do a lot of other things, Josh. You're not just a testing guy, but it is a thing that you're really good at teaching. So I appreciate that, and it's cool that you're writing this book.
Thank you. I appreciate the encouragement.
We're gonna make sure that we hit this up later too, so people see it if they're tuning in later.
Shall we write some code in the app?
Let's write some code.
So going back to it, Yeah, so looking at the screen there, we've already got a screen. We're doing test after now.
Yeah.
We've got our code already.
Yeah.
So what things would be helpful to confirm in this? I think things to just kind of show basic use of RNTL would be, let's confirm that that title is there up at the top of that screen, and then let's confirm that the continue button works when we click on it.
I like that.
We'll do one of those at a time, maybe.
Cool. Now, do you believe in co-locating tests, or do you like to throw it into the test folder?
I like co-locating it. I found that it's just easier to find it, and I've experienced very few downsides with co-locating.
Okay, cool. So do we need, again, I haven't done much with this. So do we need a, to run this, we can just do.
It's just going to be a jest run. Just like it would run any other jest test of yours, it'll run your jest React Native tested library tests.
Okay. So let's see if this worked. Let's see here. Cool. Feel free, Josh, if you want. And then what I can do is, let me. So we can bring in. Obviously, we can bring in all these other things, but let's just make sure this is even running. I guess I'm just gonna drop this in and just say, test ran.
There you go. Yeah, it's absolutely.
And yeah, I mean we can we can obviously just do the classic expect true to be true or something like that.
Totally.
Now, if I run yarn test, let's see if it picks that up. Actually, what I want to do, so we do have some tests here. It's not going to be super fast. And we can run the watch as well. Yeah, that did. I'm going to say expect true to be false. I think I can do, is it test watch? I forget. I'm going to go to the package JSON.
-- watch all with a capital A, I think, is what Jest uses.
Okay. I thought we had a watch in here. We don't. Okay. So I'm just gonna run it. So test -- watch all. And then this should blow up. This should be like, yo, it didn't work. Yep, it failed. So this is working. Cool. It is picking up, and it did fail when we expected it to fail. So, all right. Josh, I didn't take a restroom break before this, which was a mistake. So I'm actually going to, we just get into the interesting stuff. I need to take a quick break before we move forward. And I don't know if you can continue if you want, or if you want to take a break with me.
I'll take a break with you, and then we'll pair program it. I'll kind of
that sounds good.
Provide suggestions for where to go, and you can type it in.
Perfect. I'm going to hit the be right back scene. We will be right back in 5 minutes or less. Thanks a lot. Okay. We are back. All right. Thanks, everybody. No, we did not quit as soon as that test failed. We just had a quick little break. Cool. So what do you want to do?
Yeah, so I think when I think about my test files, I usually, again, that Ruby influence, I usually use the describe blocks and the it rather than test for the individual tests. You can use test, that's fine. But usually I'll have the one file because they're co-located. This is the one test file that corresponds to the welcome screen. Yeah, so I'll have a describe block that refers to the screen. And someone in my Discord group found out recently that I think Jest does not like multiple describe blocks in one file.
Really?
So that works out well to have just the one.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good to know.
Apparently.
Good to know.
Yeah. So I, following the, again, not that we're doing TDD, but one of the associated approaches is the idea of having really focused individual tests. Right. And that's something that's different from Detox because you'll tend to go through a longer flow in that.
Yeah, because it's so slow to like spin up a brand new context.
Yeah, so I would say, as far as the order of what we're doing, let's make one test the test that the title message shows, and we'll do a separate test, the test that the button works.
Shows the title message. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, do we need an async? I assume?
I don't think for this. I believe we'll have to check the RNTL docs to see. But yeah, like triggerings of re-renderings of a component does handle synchronously. And that is different with Detox as well. Detox, everything is async, partially because it's talking remotely to the app. But rendering happens within the same JavaScript runtime. So a lot of RNTL is synchronous, which actually becomes more complex when you need to remember what's async, unfortunately.
Yep. Now I don't know
more RNTL than you let on if you're dropping all this in easily.
No. This is GitHub Copilot.
Are you serious? Oh man, I haven't played with it much.
Oh my goodness. Okay, yeah. By the way, it's telling me to import this from React DOM, this render, but is this render even right?
Yeah, render is the right function, and it's going to come from React Native testing library.
Okay, so import render from React Native.
Yeah, and it's actually, it's at testing library / React Native.
You're right. Yeah, perfect. And then we have to, of course, import our welcome screen. So I have to import React, apparently?
Yeah, I'm never sure in different setups when React can be excluded. I'm hopping back and forth between React Native CLI and Expo and tests all the time. So
yeah, it's now telling me that I'm missing a prop, navigation and route.
Right. So this is interesting, right? These are props that are provided by React Navigation implicitly or automatically when it calls it, because we're explicitly calling the screen here. I can get away with it in JavaScript and just have something blow up confusingly later. But with TypeScript, you actually have to.
Is this thing going to blow up? I'm curious. Let's see here. It may not like this. Okay. Type instantiation. So we're having a bit of a TypeScript issue here. This is probably focused on something we're doing. Actually, I've run into this before. I have run into this.
It's I18N. Do you have internationalization built in by default in Ignite template?
We do. I know this is this is a real issue, though. This is something that I've seen before. It's not us doing this. I think that there's a fix for this. And I'm trying to remember what it was. But
Danny says we need navigation wrapper, but that was probably related to the previous.
Yeah, exactly. You know what? Yeah, let's just move on.
Yeah.
All right. It did fail, so let's take a look at that. No safe area insets value available. So again, it's asking for a provider here.
Yeah, and that's just what I was saying happened on my apps as well. And so I think you could maybe find a way to mock it out, but I think providing a real safe area provider, and let me check my code to see the way to provide fake data to them.
Yeah, I'd love to see how you structure this.
Yeah.
So this is a situation where there's some context that we are assuming is available to welcome screen at all times, which it is if it's in the app. But if you're trying to isolate and show it without that, then obviously there's, there can be problems here.
Is it okay if I code this in through the Visual Studio
Please do.
sharing?
Please do.
Yeah. All right. So I'm pulling in safe area provider. Do you know if y'all use React Native safe area context rather than the built-in safe area provider?
It looks like it's there. So
Okay.
I can certainly go and look elsewhere, but I believe, yeah, we are using it. Yep. That's what we're using.
Yeah. Let me try. I had to provide some data to it in my app as well, but that may not be needed here.
By the way, I do want to catch up a little bit on some chat because we're a little behind. There's a conversation about accessibility, regression tests, accessibility IDs. I'm not going to go into that too much. Danny asked if we've been watching the app.js conf. I have not. I'd love to go to it sometime. Usually you'd write a failing test in TDD, correct, Danny? That is true. Yarn test screen just has a watch all filter. And then it looks like you responded to Chan Man about the book, which is awesome. And the free intro chapter, so you can see that about theory. And then Danny says need a navigation wrapper, as Josh said, and you can mock the I18N to just return the key. TS ignore for the render. And Danny says the conf has some really cool talks. Sorry about that. We did get a little behind on that, but that also gave Josh some time to get this figured out. Cool.
Yeah,
so you just simply wrapped it in the provider.
Yeah, it looks like in this case, just having a provider there in order to provide safe area insets was all that was needed for now.
Yeah. So unable to find an element with text, your new app.
Right, so that's the automatically populated assertion that came from GitHub Copilot, right?
It is.
But that is the right text that should be showing up.
So I'm gonna go look at. Well, does it show what we do? Like, can you see what you are getting?
Wait, the way you can do that is you can destructure the debug function coming back from the result, and then you could call debug, and it'll output the JSX component tree into the console.
That's from the get by text?
From the result of render. So where you pull get by text back, you can also pull out debug there.
Oh.
And I have a theory that I'm researching in the meantime while you do that.
By the way, is debug?
It's not a console log. It's just you just call the debug function and it will log it out for you.
Oh, okay. Cool.
I think.
By the way, GitHub Copilot, people think it's a toy, but I'm a huge believer. I think that it speeds me up in some cases by 2x in what I do just on a daily basis. So I'm a big fan. We are not getting output there. Let me go to the other terminal. Oh, here it is. Okay. So no, that's not true. Some other logs here. Let me just clear that, save.
I have something we can try, but yeah, let's see if we can get this debug output, because that is very helpful to have for us and for others. Oh, you know what? Because it's after the expects, I think it doesn't get there. So if you call debug as the very first thing after render, that might be enough.
Good call. Good call. Okay, there's the console. Cool. So we have safe area provider, and then it has undefined. That's style.
Oh, that's all that's being outputted? Interesting.
Really? Norfeld says, can we recommend doing const utils equals render? TS will then help you get all of you want, like utils.debug.
So just rather than destructuring, you just take a full object that you
I see.
properly.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, I am getting the debug there, but yeah, this is kind of interesting that we're only getting the RNC safe area provider.
So it might be that safe area doesn't render out until it has metrics. So let me provide the other thing that I have in my app.
Okay, the initial metrics. Or
yeah, and And after we get this running, I want to comment on this challenge of kind of getting this unit test set up. I mean, this is that boilerplate that one of the people in the chat might have been referring to, or at least it is.
And this is where if we set up Ignite with all of this stuff, we could hide all that away so that people don't have to think about it. They just write their tests. Okay. Oh yeah. You were exactly right. Now we got all this crap. Like it's all coming in.
Okay.
It's
so
still failing.
now.
It's still failing. It's still saying your new app is not there. But I'm scanning through
see
to
if you can find the text output of the title, because then I can comment on what I think is going on.
Ready for launch.test. Almost. Your new app, comma. So your new app is there.
So I think that RNTL might, I believe the get by text is exact match only. So I think we need to have the comma in there.
Really?
And I think so. There is an alternative we can check in a minute, but let's try that first to see if that matches for us.
Yep, that did work. So it had to be perfect. Okay, so that is basically testing, is there a text that has this exact text instead of like containing that text. Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah. Now, do you want to try, I think that Jest native library we added, I believe, has a partial match for text. Do you want to try adding an expectation real quick to see if that works?
Sure, let's do that. So we're going to import from, is it testing Jest native? Okay.
Actually, we don't need any imports there because it adds different matchers we can chain on the end of our expect.
Oh, okay. So in this case, expect.
So what it allows us to do, we can get an element and we can say expect that to have text content, and then we pass it in. Now the challenge there is we'd have to either look it up by a test ID or by something else, which isn't quite so much the accessibility approach. But let's use the test ID there because I can't make up anything else on the spot, and we'll just see it working. How about that?
Yeah, okay. Sounds good. So it'd be like get by, let's see here. Or is it just get?
Get by test ID. And I can never remember if the ID is lowercase d in that case, right?
Doesn't seem to be picking up on that. Is that from...
Well, we didn't destructure it because you didn't use utils like Norfeld.
Oh, yeah. Good call. Yeah. All right. And then in this case, we're going to have to get the test ID for this, which it doesn't have one. Do we have to add it then?
Yeah, you do.
Title
you can
1,
just call it title. Yeah, because it's like, what would you call it? Because it's just part of the text, which is kind of interesting.
Now,
but you know, if you were going to really have a test, you might structure it all differently.
Right. Oh, and I guess I got rid of that right there. So there's an issue where it's claiming that it does not exist on that type. Yeah, property does not exist on this. So do we need to get the render from the other one?
No, this is that setup file. Did we do that setup file in our Jest config? I think we didn't create the file. I think we only did one step out of the 2 steps.
Oh, did I miss something?
Check out the the Jest config file that we did earlier.
Okay.
This should be an encouragement to everyone. Like, just because you write a book, it doesn't mean you know anything that you're doing when it comes to testing. I need GitHub Copilot to set up my project.
I know, right?
So in setup files after M, so this is... Oh, okay, hang on a second. So this is done differently than I've done it. But I think... Let me see. This might not be the problem. Let me find out. Okay. Once in your test setup file. So I forget where we got
there's an option with exact false, by the way, says Norfeld. So we can actually...
Oh, nice.
We can actually... I want to try that one.
Yeah, that's going to be nicer because we're not going to need that test ID.
Exactly, yeah. The test ID is sort of like only if you need to. And I think Danny mentioned that earlier. Or someone mentioned it earlier, that you fall back on the test ID only if you have to.
So that's setup files after env. That is what I have.
Yeah.
That's what's in the RNTL instructions.
Right.
But that's what should be making it available.
Maybe I just need to rerun this. I don't know. I'm gonna yarn and then rerun this again.
Yeah, maybe so. The other thing we could do is tweak this to a bit of a more roundabout way that I usually do it, and then we can see maybe that instruction is not quite right.
So I'm gonna go back to get by text.
Yeah, let's. You know what? Let's do that. That'll be more preferable, anyways.
I like that. This will be to be truthy. Now I tend to not really like the to be truthly too much. I like to have like to contain. So it'd be kind of cool to like get everything to contain this, but yeah. All right. So let's say that we remove this and then what do we need here? Pass the option. Can we do like?
It's probably a second argument with an object. Yeah.
Okay, exact.
I don't know for sure, but
that looks right. And I'm not using this in TypeScript's being or ESLint or whatever is being. To be truthy wouldn't do anything extra. Yeah, the reason I like to contain is that it'll tell you what it did contain, and not just hey it's false, you know. Okay, so I'm actually going to disable the debug for now, just because we're in a position where we're seeing of course.
Man, the static typing, man, it sure is frustrating. I'm only happy.
I'll tell you what, I usually turn stuff like that off. Like no unused locals, I usually turn that off. Whoops. Because I can go back through and fix that really easily later, like when I'm done. But during development, it's annoying. So yeah. All right. Cool. So everything passed. We get by text, exact false. Very cool. Thanks for the suggestion there, Norfeld.
You know, so if I can comment on something big picture for a second, you know, we had some challenges here setting up this initial stuff, and I absolutely agree that with Ignite, when you can have examples in place, even abstractions in place, like Danny mentioned, having a render with providers utility, generate that from start, people have a pattern to follow, and that works really well. The other thing that comes to mind for me in all of this is just a difference of constraint, where when you are writing your tests after the implementation code, you can stumble into these setup things and sort of all at once and can be very challenging. And so I wonder if, you know, the fact that I do like test-driven development a lot of the time, that might steer me more towards those lower levels, because I'm starting with a failing test and it's only, you know, I'm starting with an empty screen, an empty component, and it's only as, so for example, with the screen dimensions, it's not like any empty component would error on that, but it's once you pull something in that requires the screen dimensions, then it'll start complaining to you. And it can just be more motivating. We luckily only had a few errors and challenges we had to get through to get this passing test. But if you're adding RNTL tests to a very, very big component in a big application, you could be stuck indefinitely. And so I can see folks adding in tests afterwards, especially like maybe an app is like complete or in a certain version. I want to add in tests afterwards. Reaching for something like Detox or Cypress on the web is going to tend to be easier there, just because in React and React Native, even more so than in other code, there is a lot of, you know, challenges and errors like that could come up when you're adding in tests after the fact. So it's a downside. That
makes sense to me. Now I'm getting an error that I didn't expect to get. I put ready for launch in there. I didn't put the period, but exact is false. So I'm curious why that is. Here, I'm just going to clear this and try saving again and then do a search for ready for launch. It's not showing up at all. Really?
So you want to check have you already looked at the debug output to see what we're seeing?
Yeah, I'm looking at it now. I know you're a little bit lagging behind because you're looking at the stream. So there's welcome screen powered by .test. This is an interesting one. So we have the internationalization. I'm wondering if yeah, that's it. It's welcome screen.readyforlaunch.test. So That is really interesting that that's what's coming through, because we have this text here. This is an I18N issue for sure. So I'm really curious why the .test is being added.
I wonder, do you know if internationalization requires a provider?
It might. But the other ones, oh, they're just text. They're not TX. So let's go to the text component here. There's this translate. So let's go look at it and see if there's a provider here. Whoops. What is it? App, TSX. So Storybook, root store provider, which by the way, I want to get rid of. I don't think we need this here. Safe area provider with the initial metrics, by the way. And error boundary, and then the app navigator. In the app navigator, we have the navigation container. And then we have the app stack, which is just the screen. So I'm not seeing anything that's requiring that. It's weird that it's adding that .test to the end. Really curious about that.
That is interesting. It's like it's a test environment, which I could see value in that to isolate you from any particular language. Maybe something in the stack is saying, oh, well, that way you're not coupled to English or Japanese or anything.
Right. Yeah, when you're testing, you can test. I wonder if that's on purpose. Translate here is the key, and then I wonder if this is yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, yeah, digging through your components, I see Expo localization and I18N.js.
Yeah.
And so it's possible that one of those, I mean, even in terms of like what locale does it detect, maybe in jest, it detects the test locale instead of English.
That is a really good point. Okay. So in this case, what we want to do here is we want this .test. And we know that that's going to load no matter what. Because like, let's say that someone has it in Japanese and then they run the test and it fails. That'd be a problem because you're not testing for Japanese, you're testing for English. And so in this case, you'd probably want these other ones to also be that same thing. We don't have it set up that way, but that's pretty interesting. That's pretty interesting.
Yeah. And again, that difference between an application test and a component test, where when you boot up in Detox, you have a running application with all those things like the screen dimensions and the interaction setup. Yeah, you're running on a English simulator or whatever.
Yeah.
Versus in a component test, it's now exposing those connections. And one of the things you can come to is in using lower level test component tests, you could see, oh wow, like there's like my component here has a lot of coupling to a lot of other things. Maybe I want to pass some things in as props rather than automatically relying on a context or a provider. Maybe the provider is ultimately there, but to make a lower level component more reusable, it's like, okay, well, I'm going to pass in those props explicitly. So, unit tests, whether it's of functions or of components, make those make that coupling, make those dependencies explicit, so you can decide if you want those dependencies or not. In this case, it makes sense.
There's sort of I think it's a valid viewpoint that making things easier to test also makes them easier to use when you're building. I don't think it's universally true, though. I think there are some cases where making something easier to test actually works against your developer experience a little bit. So I think it's a little bit of a fine balance there. Like, hey, I have to pass in all these things, rather than it just kind of knowing because, it's in my app and I control the environment in my app, type of thing. So I think that's an interesting one to kind of navigate. But we did get this to pass, and we know that it's showing the title message. What would you do next?
Yeah, I think that that test seems good. I mean, probably turn off the debug again.
Oh yeah, good call.
But but I feel good about the state of that test. I think it could be interesting to go on to the button and see what it's like to test that one next.
It has a continue button that navigates to the, what screen is it anyway? Demo screen? I think it's the demo screen.
Yeah. And I could try to explain theory in advance,
Mhm.
but could very well be wrong anyways. And it could be better, I think, to like, let's just step through it one step at a time. Let's try getting the button. Let's try
Yeah.
clicking on it in the test and see what happens.
So GitHub Copilot is trying to predict what we want to write. So I'm just going to hit tab. And I'm going to see if it worked.
Yeah, even just checking that the button is there first is valuable.
Yeah,
we probably don't need that ongoing, but that is something I found when you're adding a test after the fact to a big existing component,
right?
Especially in React Native, just add one test step at a time, because then if something blows up, at what point.
It's really obvious which one is the problem here. So again, we have the translation thing. So I'm just going to go .test, and then hopefully that will work. Yep, it worked. Okay, cool. So now we want to be able to click that button, right?
Yeah. Yeah, let me find the API for that. Yeah, so it's Fire Event. This is another thing where your React Native testing library mirrors the older React testing library, where you import a Fire Event function from the main library itself.
Okay.
And I see all your automation tools have handled that for you.
Yeah.
So that's very great.
So we might want to only get this once, right? Like do something like const button equals this, and then
button. Although the thing is, I would say because you're pressing it, and because the test is going to fail if it's not found anyway, I don't think we need an expectation. I think it's just Fire Event press get by text. You can put it in a variable if you want to give it a nice name, but I don't think we need to first assert it's present and then click it.
You're right. Yeah, the get by test will fail because it won't find the button and it won't press it. Okay.
Right. Yeah.
Now, I'm a little weirded out that this isn't async. Is it async? It is not async.
See. It's not async. I think typing stuff in might be async, but the way it works is, and I'm not as versed with all the internals of React to be able to speak to it, but like you click, it executes a function that just does some JavaScript function that does some event handler functionality.
Yeah.
Maybe it sets some state. So let's set aside. Let's do the thing about the most trivial case.
Right.
A button click sets some state. The setting of a state triggers React to re-render.
Right.
So that I don't know for sure if that happens in the same JavaScript event loop or some micro ticks or whatever the term is for those. But it's not like it's behind a timer. It's not like it's waiting 100 milliseconds. And so in that sense, it's synchronous.
Yeah.
In that sense, like before the next step of your test happens.
Right.
In this case, if you don't have a set timeout and you don't have a web service call or something, by the time the next line in your test happens synchronously, the state will be updated and the component will be re-rendered. There's probably some nuance there, but generally when I'm writing basic tests, that's the mental model I have, and generally it works.
That makes sense to me. Norfeld says the assertion is that you can get by text is possible. Okay, makes sense. Danny says when you use find by, it's async. Get by is sync. Okay, that's a good thing to know. Now this is actually expected. Cannot read property navigate of null. Whoops. And that's because our navigation is null. We're not passing in a navigation. So we need to mock or potentially pass in an actual navigation here. What do you prefer in this case, Josh?
Right. So there's something we could validate on the stream if we want, because it's been so long since I've tried it that I don't know for sure. But my understanding is that React Navigation, the real implementation, has native code as a part of it. It's not all just implemented in JavaScript.
Right.
And so as a result, we would not have the option in an RNTL test to have the navigation layer happen.
Yes. There is, like if you're using React Native screens, then there would be a native component for sure. And we are using that here.
Gotcha. Yeah, and so as a result of that, that does work in Detox. So in a Detox test, it kind of comes down to, like, on our specific platform, what's the difference between an end-to-end test and a broad-ranging integration test and what is covered. And so RNTL inherently can't go any further than the JavaScript boundaries.
Right.
It is just your JavaScript. So the model I have of a screen test is all the JavaScript on this screen will connect it together. But because the navigation layer gets into some native code, that's just the point that I decide to slice it off.
Yes.
And typically, I might have a few smoke tests. And again, if you find you want more Detox tests, that's great. But at least in an app, I might have a few smoke tests that just say, let me make sure the app boots in Detox. Let me make sure that the navigation is wired up. I can see the different screens. But after that, at some point, it's like if my app is not too not too big, it's like probably I'll be able to navigate to all the screens. Probably they don't change too much. Probably I won't break it. And into the course of manual testing and like beta use, probably I would find if the navigation configuration layer wasn't working. So I find that I can get most of the confidence that I need doing these screen tests, because that's where the non-trivial application logic lives.
I think I'm with you on that. That makes sense. Now, Danny said React Navigation comes with some mocks. I'm gonna look. See. Yeah,
this would be good to look into. While you're looking there, let me talk about the trade-offs.
Yeah, go for it.
So I haven't actually looked into React Navigation mocks because I'm lazy. So that's step number one. Factor number one. The second factor is I have an inclination, and that inclination is, this again comes from my testing background, is if I can, if different libraries provide mocks or mocking utilities or testing utilities, that can be very useful, but not all of them do. And so if I learn React Navigation mocks, that's just a solution for React Navigation. If I learn an approach for mocking Axios for my web service requests, that doesn't translate over. And so then I start to feel helpless when it's like, oh, another one of my dependencies I find that I need to mock. It's React Native. Like doesn't have quite the same high level of adoption as third-party libraries. So that's not to say, React Navigation is one of the most highly adopted ones. These mocks are probably really good, but it's why I find myself leaning towards, let me think about mocking in general. How can I mock manually, set something up as a mock, so that, because that's an approach I can use. Hey, if my component just says I need a prop of something, I can just provide it the minimal prop needed. And so it can lead into some challenges. And I do remember on that last RNCLI professional project I did, we did take advantage of officially provided mocks for a number of things. But yeah, that's when it comes to, so I guess really we put together three options: is test in integration with the real code, including native code potentially in Detox. Use official mocks provided by a library, or do your own mocking, which is to say, set it up in such a way that you can just set up a simple object to pass in, or a simple jest mock function, and then maybe that'll work. There's lots of factors that could lead you to one or the other of those, but that's the options you have.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. So in the case of React Native Testing Library, it's a very common thing, and so having React Navigation mocking is a common thing to do. But kind of like, again, you're expanding the scope of what you're testing if you're bringing in all of these other things. Like, we're starting to test now navigation, but I guess that is part of what we're looking at here. The continue button is, it's like, if we want to just test that the continue button can be clicked, we just have to check and make sure it's a button. That's all. But if we have to test, did it go to this other screen? Now we have to bring in all of that navigation context. So there's a little bit of like, what do you want to do here? So in this case, like, this is kind of a really simple one, but maybe in this case, we would want to bring in the app navigator and then provide the navigation container around it. And that will then, let's see. What did it? Invalid unexpected token. What's the problem here? Wonder what I'm doing wrong.
I don't know. What is the app navigator? Is that a component in Ignite?
It is. So we have this navigator, and there's probably an icon that it's trying to load. It looks like there is. There's a back icon. And it's a PNG, and this thing is choking on that because we probably have to do something else here as well.
Yeah, and I would imagine if you're wanting to test the full app at some point, you would want to make sure that your PNGs could run inside your tests.
Right. So I'm sure that's a thing you'd have to do some setup on, because it's like in a web context, it's not going to know how to require a PNG like you can in React Native.
Let me provide a suggestion that confirms all my prior assumptions and approaches to things.
Yeah.
I think looking at the code, and I think you've maybe reverted it now, depending on I'm operating in two different times at once because of the
Sorry. Code. If I need to slow down, let me know.
Oh, sure. Oh, no, I see it now. So yeah, when you're pulling in the app navigator,
Mm-hmm.
if my understanding is right, like that has all the screens under it. Is that correct?
The app navigator. Wait, hold on a second. Why is there commas there anyway? That might actually have been part of the issue there. But I think it'll still choke on that. Yeah, it did. So the app navigator has it has our navigation container, and then it has our app stack, which, by the way, I guess I don't need the navigation container then. Is that right? And then the app stack itself is a stack navigator that has 3 screens in it.
Yeah, so it's not the symptom we're seeing right now, but once that stack navigator comes in, like I'm pretty sure that is going to fail unless we were to set up the official mocking from React Navigation. But the other thing I want to point out from a test design standpoint is when we're now specifying App Navigator there rather than specifying the welcome screen.
Right.
And so in a sense, the scope of our test expanded, that it's the whole application now. Like if it was running for us, we'd be testing the whole application.
Which is not, this isn't really what we want to do. Right. Yeah, I think you're right. So if we were to revert and go back to this welcome screen and then have our navigation, and by the way, Norfelt has a good, let's see here, what is the other route? Has a good suggestion. He says that he likes to, and I'm just going to throw this up here for a second, navigation mock, right? And then I can pass that in. We have this just.function. It does not like this. Missing following properties, has a bunch of other stuff. So I guess I could, whatever, like as any here. But this idea here is that it'll just call this mocked function here for navigate. And then we could verify that actually did get called.
Yeah, I like this approach as well. Norfelt was a regular on my live streams recently,
nice.
And so we learnned from each other a lot and coordinated.
That's awesome.
And so let me comment on this navigation mock real quick before we kind of assert on it. So really, what we're saying here, this is something interesting to say about static types as well, which is cool.
Yeah.
So React Navigation is a whole big thing that has all kinds of complexity, both in the implementation of it and also the interface of the objects and the props that it provides to you.
Right.
For the sake of our test, though, we're saying hey, I just want to know that clicking the continue button navigates me to the demo screen.
Yeah.
And so the dependency that we have is just that navigate property of the object, and that it is a function that we're gonna check in a minute that it was called. Maybe check the props that are passed to it as well.
Yeah.
And so that's the interface that we need. That's the slice of the prop that we're given that we need. I guess this really actually relates to a design principle from object-oriented design. Not that this is object-oriented in JavaScript here, but it's the interface segregation principle, I think. The idea that we just kind of bind ourselves only to the minimal interface in terms of what methods are there and what props do they take and what fields are available in the type. The minimal interface that we need in the context. In this case, all that we don't need all of what a navigation object is.
Right.
All we need is something that has a navigation prop.
True.
Yeah. And in fact, so it's interesting the constraint that TypeScript provides here, where TypeScript is saying, hey, this navigation prop needs to be a navigation object. And in production, that's right. That is the case. And yet in our code, for the code path we're executing in this test right here,
we don't need
the only thing that's negated is navigate. And so there's an interesting developer pressure in terms of oh, I'm getting the TypeScript warning, and you have to think, you have to say, do I want to write any? I've been, Jamon says I should use any. Other people say I shouldn't use any, and making a decision there. And so it's an interesting pressure versus in a dynamic typing standpoint. It's kind of more hey, put in whatever we want. And again, the downside of that is something later on in the test could fail for mysterious reasons.
Exactly.
But so this approach, and this kind of documents, it lets you know in the test, oh, what of the navigation am I using?
Yeah.
And if you see it's just navigate, that's interesting. If you see there's 4 or 5 or 6 things that are used, it's wow, okay, my component is highly coupled to navigation. There's a lot of navigation things that it does.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Great point. Excellent point. Now, I think that this is probably fine. But again, people might reasonably disagree here. Danny says, in my previous job, we did all the tests in JavaScript, and that is a way to do that. There's an argument for not using TypeScript in tests at all. I like TDD and TS and find the conflict Josh described. So this is a real thing. This isn't just us. Cool. Okay. So we gave it a mock. Now, how do we ensure that this actually gets called?
Yeah, so at this point, we have an expectation to write that's just the built-in jest functionality. This is back out of RNTL. So after the press, just synchronously, we don't need an await or anything, I don't believe. We just want to expect that navigation mock.navigate. And then outside of the parens, to have been called with. And is that going to be the correct value?
I think so.
That's pretty crazy if GitHub Copilot found that or guessed that. Oh, well, it navigates to the demo screen. The test will tell us if not.
So it claims that it worked. Let me try it with something else.
Right. I would.
This is a favorite thing that I like to do. Make it fail. Yeah, it says expected demo 222, but it received demo. So actually, GitHub Copilot nailed it. That whole thing.
And just so I can visualize, and the watchers as well, can you pull up the actual component and go to the button in it so we can see like the implementation code?
So there's this next screen, which is just a navigation.navigate to demo. I know it's a little delayed for you.
Yeah. No, cool. Yeah.
That's
all right.
it.
And so now, so our test has asserted exactly that. And this comes to the mindset of you're having in your test is you could say, well, I need to make sure the other screen comes up.
Yeah.
And like in the full application running together, yes, like you do need to make sure the other screen comes up. But we've isolated our test here just to the welcome screen.
Yeah.
What's the responsibility of the welcome screen?
Right.
And the responsibility of this screen is just to issue that call to navigation.navigate. And that gets to something that that Chanman in the chat was referencing earlier, like what's the role of mocks? It's like, okay, well, when we've isolated, this is one role of mocks, is when we've isolated a screen, we're confirming that an outgoing method call happens. And like if that is called, that's all our test needs to know. It's elsewhere, it's up in React Navigation in our application config that confirms that the right thing happens in response to that. But this is not mocking to reduce realism. It's like, oh, it's the best we can do. Like, it's too bad. It's like, no, this is exactly what we want to specify happens within the context of the screen. That's exactly the output responsibility of this screen.
Right. I love it. So we are probably going to need this safe area metrics in another file, now that we're in, let's see here. Now that we're pulling this in. So if we're creating a demo screen test, for example, so if I pull this out and drop it into my test folder, I have, let's see here. There's some mocks already in here, actually. Mock file. Okay. Oh, that's just okay. So based on how we already do some things, it probably makes sense to do it the same way. So mock, what is that called? Safe area. .ts. We'll just do that, and we'll just export the safe area metrics here, and then we can import that from that file.
Can I ask you a live share question real quick?
Yeah, sure.
So I remember reading about the different modes to it. Like, so I clicked on another file, so I'm not locally following along with you.
Yeah.
Is there a way for me to tell it, hey, just go where Jamon is going?
Yes. So if you click on that button to the right for the live share thing, and then go down to my name and click the little green, I thought this worked. I thought you could just like click the green. For some reason, it's not showing that you're connected. Oh wait, no, sorry, it's at the top. Participants. There's like a pink circle. I think if you click that, it should bring you to where I am.
I am actually. I don't have that live share sidebar, but let me.
Oh really? It should be.
Nope.
You're not seeing the thing on the side there.
No, we should hold off. It's just my local configuration then. Yeah, let's not.
Okay. Yeah, no worries.
But I can see you on the video.
Yeah. Cool. All right, so I did that to bring in the safe area metrics. It says, look at the top, there's a pin. Okay, there's a pin button right here. Follow participant. I think there's a way I can make you follow me. Focus participant, follow to the side. I can't really. Okay, I thought there was a way you could say, hey, come see me. Focus participants. Maybe that's it. Okay. All right, but yeah, that is a thing. Why are we getting a fail here? Oh, our test. We don't have a test. All right, let's go there and let's do this.
Oh, it actually worked. Yeah, I clicked that pin on my end.
Yeah.
And then it's now moving me around.
Nice.
So thanks, Norfeld. Always got my back.
Always. So we're going to describe the demo screen here, and then we might have it shows a title of what's in this stack.
And speaking of this title, notice in the other test, we didn't test all the text that showed up on the whole screen. I checked for text first just because it was the first easy step to take. But it can also be a way just to confirm, like, hey, like if the title of the screen is not showing, it's a very clear way in the test failure to be like, oh, the screen's not coming up, which happened with us when the safe area context was not rendering the child.
Exactly.
We saw, wow, even the plain static title is not showing there. So it was helpful feedback. But I don't feel the need to assert on all the copy. If you have some copy that maybe conditionally shows, that's now behavior.
Yes.
And so you might say, oh, if the user's not logged in, this text should not show. If the user is logged in, this text should show. So that's how I might decide what to assert on and what not to assert on.
Makes sense to me. Now, it failed. And again, I really wish that... unable to find an element with the text. So if I go to the demo screen...
Internationalization.
It's probably internationalization here. So demoscreen.title.test is going to be the thing that it does. So let's do this here. And then shows a title with I18N just so I can... Yeah, it should pass.
Something interesting that our tests have showed us is that some of our text is internationalized and some is not.
That's a
That's
very
not
good
obvious
point.
when we're using the app, but
That's
it visualized that difference to us to think about, like, is that the way we want to do it?
That's an excellent point. That's actually a vote for using this .test thing for sure. Cool. All right. So that's obviously there. Now, what else can we do here? We can demo the Reactatron. So this would be an example where... let's see here. Test the demo Reactatron button. Now, I tend to... So let's see if this is... if GitHub Copilot will do everything we want it to here. All right, so we're going to be getting demo Reactatron. So again, this will be something that needs to be its demo screen. Demo Reactatron is demoscreen.reactatron.test.
Yeah.
And that should pass. Sorry, this music isn't working for me. I have to switch to the next one. All right. Yeah, it passed. Okay, so now what's GitHub Copilot going to tell us to do? Test it. Shows we already did that. Okay, so GitHub Copilot is confused. So let's do what we did before, which is fire event, and I need to. So we're going to get that there, and I forget the API. How fire event.
I forget what the other test did, but fire event.press, I believe, will work.
.press. All right. And then this is a situation where it should fire off Reactatron. There was a mock Reactatron right here. Okay, that doesn't really do much there. Interesting. So let's just go look at the demo, I guess. Demo Reactatron. It will do console.tron, and then it does a bunch of other stuff like calling log important, and display. And it's also doing this. I don't understand. This stuff, I'm actually really not happy with how this stuff works. Yeah, this stuff all needs to be redone in Ignite. This is very old, and it was an interesting idea at the time. But I guess the big thing here is we want to know that console.tron.log, long important, and display are called here.
Yeah. So Reactatron adds .tron to the console object, I guess.
It does. How do you How do you mock that directly then?
I don't know. There's this way, Jest's ability to like mock existing objects is something that's always felt a little slippery to me. By contrast, when I can pass in an explicit, I mean, people say, oh, make your dependencies explicit. And one of the reasons why is like, hey, if I'm just passing in that navigation object, like I just set it up to be what it is. It's not messing with any existing objects. But I think in this case, we probably will need to.
You know,
like when I'm
sorry. I was just going to say, console.tron can be just passed in with, okay. Wow. GitHub Copilot just like straight up. It's Reactatron for dev, no ops. For prod. So I don't know why this is complaining. Is not assignable. So,
I wonder if it's actually not assignable or just TypeScript doesn't want it to be assignable.
I think it's TypeScript. So we have these here, and then like you said, now we can do expect. Oh boy, yeah. GitHub Copilot is actually extremely helpful with tests because it already expected. That's
crazy.
All right, all three of them.
Yeah. Danny was saying that Copilot is really helpful and interesting for tests. So I mean, I might have learned. I might need to give it a try.
You do need to. You know,
it's pretty magical so far.
It is. Now, what's really interesting here is it not only knew that we wanted to call .log, but also display and log important. Now, let's say to have been called with, and then I'm going to give it some foo or something just to make it fail.
Yep. I love this approach.
I don't trust it when everything passes. I want to see it fail and then pass. Okay, it failed.
Yeah.
And then I get rid of that, and then I go back. Nice. Okay, very cool.
So actually, I like to keep the called within. So can I propose that?
Good call.
So yeah, like so if I mean, it depends on how granular you're getting, but like if you care about like let me make sure I'm passing the right thing to it. Like with navigate, we wanted to make sure it was navigating to the right screen.
Yeah.
There's actually some Jest ESLint configs will say, hey, don't use to have been called, use to have been called with. And even if there's no arguments, it's called with no arguments.
So GitHub Copilot went and read the demo screen and knows that we want to put I am important in here.
I'm actually scared.
Now it thinks that this needs to be also I am important. Oh wait, no, that is the I am important. So we got that wrong actually. It was this one. Not that it's that much wrong.
Jobs are safe.
Okay, now it's giving me a, let's see if this, it's just, I'm just tabbing through. Tab driven development here. It's reading everything. Why is it saying deeper? Oh yeah, because I think that's real. What are we missing here? One more. Now I'm going to purposely break this. Okay, something did fail though. Let's see which one. To have been called with. Okay, so the problem with to have been called with is probably that it's doing an exact match here. This needs to be like a fuzzy, like deep comparison, right?
You're wanting it to be a fuzzy comparison.
Yeah, I do. Yeah. So I'm curious on that.
Yeah, if you check, I can get you the name, but I can also show you where it is in the Jest API.
Okay.
It's
expect. I can't decide if I'm in love or out of a job. That's great.
Yeah.
Say again.
Yeah. So I can give you the answer, but I can if you want to pull up the Jest docs, I can show folks where to find these. If you go to in TypeScript it might give it to you, but it's expect.objectContaining. That's the API we're going to use. And so in here you go into the API section in the top navigation bar.
Yeah, object containing. Oh, you said API section. Okay. And then if I scroll, sorry, it's so far behind.
Yeah, sorry, no problem. So this lists all these things, and the only thing that I remember is that in Jest, when you have one of these fuzzy matchers, it's nested under expect dot. And so I go here, you click on expect, and then you can see all those things. You have expect dot anything, So that could actually confirm that an argument is passed, but you don't care what it is.
Ah, okay.
Yeah.
There's
but
array containing.
Object containing.
Object containing. Yeah.
Yeah. Object containing. You should be able to pass in an object. You can give it keys and values, and the object can have other key value pairs, but at least needs to have those. And I'm pretty sure you can nest expect object containings down inside as well.
So how would I do that with to have been called with, though? Let's see. Oh, do I have to do that inside?
Yeah, to have been called with expect dot object
containing. I think we have an additional curly somewhere over here. Did I get that wrong? I got that wrong. I thought that was right. Let's see. What did I mess up here? Is there a parenthesis missing? It is. Okay. Okay. Let's see if this passes. Okay. It doesn't like it.
Oh, but it should be showing what the difference is. Is it showing a nice diff? Maybe not. Something we could try here, if the diff is not helpful,
there is a
you
diff.
could do
Yeah.
You could do like you comment out parts of it and just expect one property at a time. So again, that you see, oh, I'm just checking the name.
Interestingly, there's a function in it. So you know what? Geb Copilot got it wrong, and we didn't notice. So we need to I'm just going to paste this in and see if it's close.
I'm going to look up what we can do about that function. I'll bet you.
Maybe just like expect on any or something.
Yeah, we should be able to do that if nothing else.
Expect on anything.
Yeah.
Ah, passed. Okay. So in that case, like, we don't care. We know that it's something, and we're not going to get that granular with it.
Right. And at some point, I mean, it's different philosophies on it. Like if you're adding tests afterwards and you're like, well, how much do I need to get confidence? Like, well, that's a lot of detail of what's being sent. Like, oh, just if the key things are there, that's fine.
Yeah.
And then on the flip side, if you are doing test-driven development, or you're like, well, I really want to specify this because I'm sending something very complicated to React Navigation.
Yeah.
Or something complicated I'm sending to a web service call. All the details need to be there.
Right.
And yet this, writing the test this way and seeing this complicated, maybe the embedded function is like, oh, maybe I'll pass that function as a separate argument and maybe that'll make more sense. And so in that way, like the test can lead you in a direction to like make that interface, what's passed in and what's passed out, a bit more helpful and understandable. And yet, but not in all cases. In some cases, like, you know what, I've got this working, it works fine. I'm not going to reuse it outside my application. Let me just write a test afterwards to give me enough confidence that I haven't broken it.
Exactly. And in this case, for me, I probably just go with expect anything here. Of course, this should just probably have been called, I guess. So this is a situation where, okay, display's really complicated. We don't care about the implementation details here. We just want to know that, hey, we triggered something.
Yeah. Well, especially, I mean, you consider the actual context. Like, this is a template project with a template screen that's showing off a Reactatron.
Yeah.
It's like, from the standpoint of the person using it, it's like, oh, if it's confirmed that display is called, that's probably, because we were kind of just passing it sample content.
Yep, totally. Now, React testing library, React native testing library, is it just focused on components, or does it have anything outside of that? Do you just use Jest for everything else?
If you're doing things that are just standalone JavaScript, or maybe your MobX state tree or a Redux data layer, those can be called with Jest. But it's part of your same Jest test suite.
Okay.
I mean, you can organize it into separate folders or something, but it can be the same Jest runner that runs all your tests that happen to pull in React Native Testing Library APIs and the ones that don't. They all run together.
That all makes sense. Very cool. Is there anything else you want to do? I mean, I feel like we hit a lot of the cool parts about this. Obviously, there are some things maybe you'd want to set up some sort of a, like a way to wrap these easier instead of having to provide it every single time. You'd have like a test provider somehow, and then that kind of pulls in everything. Some stuff like that. But I don't know. What are your thoughts, Josh?
Well, so in the sample content that the Ignite template has right now, is there anywhere that there's text inputs that we could type into?
Unfortunately, no, but we could add that.
Yeah, we could add a trivial one. I mean, I think that's helpful just to show because the way of interacting with text inputs is a bit different
Yeah.
in RNTL. I mean, same thing in RTL as well. But then you get to see state being updated, the results of the state. So yeah, taking a few minutes to do a text field could be good.
Okay, cool. So in this, what I'm thinking maybe is in this demo screen, we could add a text box that when you type something into it and then click a button, I don't know if it would maybe update some state or at least show an alert or something like that.
Yeah. I mean, some of the simplest approach you could take is you could have the value of the text echoed out. Of the text input echoed out in a text field. And so you just type in the one and you ensure that the name also shows up.
Oh, okay.
outside.
Let's do that.
You know what I mean?
Let's do that.
Yeah.
So
That'll probably be the simplest to demo.
Integrated here. So, okay, let's just put it up here. All right. So, I don't know. Just throw a view in, I suppose. And then text input. By the way, it imported from React Native gesture handler. I'm not sure if we want that or not. I don't know if you use that one or if you use one from React Native itself.
Yeah, no, I've only used the one from React Native or one from something like React Native Paper
Yeah,
as far
makes
as an
sense.
off-the-shelf library.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So text input, and then the value is.
Hey, do you want to test drive this?
Let's
So
test
we'll write
drive
the
it.
test first.
Let's test. Let's do test-driven development.
Cool.
All right. So it has an input. Sure. I don't know. I probably should make it better than that, but let's go with that. All right. Has an input.
Yeah, and in this case, we can actually follow that thing that I proposed earlier. It's like there's different ways. You can do test-driven development where you write a whole test and then fix one failure at a time.
Right.
Some of the more rigid approaches actually encourage only write enough tests to get it to fail. And I don't actually usually follow that approach, but I think it would be really helpful for the stream.
Oh, let's do it.
Let's just get a test that's enough to confirm that there is an input.
Okay. So I don't know if we should be using input, but yeah, it failed, and it's saying that there is no test ID input.
Let's change the assertion though. I'm just looking up what I use in my label text. I have to consult this to see. If I was in React Native every day at work, I'd know and doing the testing. But yeah, it's if you do get by label text, and so that can be I'm using React Native Paper, so we'll have to see what we can do with the built-in text input.
Yeah, get by label text does not seem to be showing up.
Oh yeah, so again, that's imported from the render.
Oh yeah, good call.
Yeah,
I keep forgetting that.
I wonder if Norfelt is a TypeScript user. I wonder if the point is like you're going to get those auto completions automatically if you use that object.
Get by label text. Type something. Is that where we're kind of like?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, like a placeholder. A placeholder would be something good. I'm not positive if label text will identify it, but let's see.
All right. So obviously this should fail. No instances found with accessibility label. Type something.
Interesting. Yeah. So let me poke around here a bit more to see if that is in fact the code we want. Oh no, there is a by placeholder text. So I didn't think about that at first, but I think having the text field placeholder will work well. Okay. So why don't we change that to get by placeholder text?
Okay. Let's see here. Get by placeholder text. There are a lot of matchers here. This is really good. Cool. Yeah. So type something and it should fail again. Yeah.
Yeah. And here again, we're making sure that it's going to be the failure we expect, not something earlier on that blew up, but it tried to find the field and it couldn't find it.
Yeah. So now if we do our text input, and we do placeholder equals this.
Yeah, and let's just configure only enough props, just like you did, to see it fail, to see it pass, because we expect this to pass.
Which it's not even showing. Oh yeah, there it is. Okay, yeah, little tiny area like spot there, but yeah, it passed. Cool.
Yeah. Cool. So what do we want to do next as the part of our test? Well, I think we want to type into it.
Yeah. So how do we do that? That would be an event, fire event, or what do we do?
Yeah, fire event. And the way I know to do this is that it's actually a change text event. So it's an event that simulates the text change.
Change text. And it's already pulling that up. Okay.
That'll work.
Yep.
Yeah. So let's save it here. We're not making any assertions, but let's just see. I think this might actually pass right away. I'm not positive. Great. It does.
It looks like it does. Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. So I guess now our assertion would be checking that other element. And I guess, again, now we'd have that temptation. We could either look it up by test ID, or maybe we could say, because this is just sample stuff, maybe we could say message : space hello. And that would be the text that we'd be looking for, get by text message : space hello. You know what I mean?
I don't. Sorry.
Yeah. So yeah, let's use the get by text function to look up the element.
Right.
And then the text would be one string that is, so we pass that as an argument to it.
So get by text, and it would be
message : string hello. Although, actually, you know what? I'm seeing this now that you write it out. If you did get by text hello, that would just ensure that text showed up somewhere on the screen.
Right.
And that could be sufficient.
Although, would it be in the text input?
I don't know. Actually, let's try it. I think that it won't find it in the text input, but let's make sure that's the case.
Okay, it did not work. Okay. Unable to find an element with text hello. So it did not find it in the text input. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
now I think we could.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So a text element, and we're going to be, obviously we have to have some state here now. So I might just throw in like a use state. MobX state tree would be more idiomatic to what we like to do, but we'll just go with this. So const.
Why don't we, after we get this passing, why don't we refactor to MobX state tree and see if the same test passes?
Yeah. I like how you think. That's good.
Yeah.
Sample text set sample text equals use state. It's a string. And I don't know, it's just like that. And then we'll import it from React. And then the sample text, we're going to put right here. And I'm just going to save to start with. And it should still fail. It did. Okay. So now we need to do an on change text here. And in this case, we need to... do we get the event here, right? So
I think with the built-in text input,
or do you just get text?
I think you can just pass it set sample text without even needing an
error. Oh, you're right. Yep.
Yeah, it's one of the things that I like about native over web is
you get the
fact that you don't have to extract that browser event.
Right, exactly. By the way, it passed. Now I might say something like sample : and it should fail. And then if I update this to be sample : and then save it, we should get what we're looking for. Yeah. Okay, that worked.
Now, I've noticed something. You followed good test-driven development by typing in the minimal to get it to pass. And so I think there's something in our implementation that's going to be weird. And so can you look back at the text input and see if you can think about something missing that's going to cause a problem? To put you on the spot on your live stream.
Value.
Yeah. So don't put in value yet.
Okay.
I think that it won't work. Like, try in the running app, try typing in the field, and I think it won't work. I think it won't accept the text.
It is actually. It is. Why? I guess because we're not setting the value.
Yeah, maybe that's maybe React works that way as well. But yeah, that's not.
You're right though. That's a good point. So if I oh come on no. Okay. Okay, it still works. Okay.
So having the value there is more idiomatic. There could be edge cases that it causes a problem if it's not there. So this is a question that could come up with test-driven development. Is like, well, hey, you said I shouldn't write any production code, so should I not write the value field there?
Here's an example where we would want to do that. So let's say that we wanted to limit the text to a shorter thing. So it'd be like text.slice only the first 10 characters. If you don't pass in the value, and I'm going to do actually test-driven development here. So let me back this out for a second, and just do on change text equals set sample text, just like we had it. And then I'm going to go to the demo screen, and I'm going to it's going to be hello, this is too long of a sentence. And then what we should be getting is, let's see. Hello, this is, how long is that? How many characters? Does that show how many characters?
Hello, this would be 10, I think.
Oh, you're right. Yep. So that's what we should get, not hello, this is too long. This will fail if we did it right. Okay, that failed. And now if I re-enable this, it should pass, but there's a problem. What it still went? Enable simple hello. And perhaps this is the issue.
Oh, actually, it's failing on the earlier one. So why is that? It's failing on the sample hello line, not the later one.
You're right.
I forgot I can click back over there on my side.
Yeah. What are we're missing? So text slice 10.
Oh, does that add like extra spaces at the end maybe? I don't know what slice does if it's shorter than 10.
Good question.
I'm going to check on my browser console.
Thank you. Yeah. There's something, yeah, we broke it. Hey, by the way, this is helpful.
Hello slice 10 is giving me an empty string.
Really?
I think the first argument needs to be 0, which I think is a starting index.
Okay. Yeah, you're right.
Slice 0,10 I think is probably going to give you what you want.
My bad on that. I think it starts at 10 if you do that. Okay, so okay, that passed. All right, cool. Now the problem is that even though my tests passed, if I go back to this over here and I start typing in, hello, this is too long, you can see that I can just keep typing much longer than I should be able to. It should stop, right? So that's where adding that value in there will automatically, so if I say this is, and now it won't let me continue. So that would be an example where you want to set the value.
Right. That's a great point. And I'm pretty sure I can find pretty quickly the assertion we can use to check that value in the text field. So why don't we throw that in, because that could be helpful for folks as well.
I'll put this back. Or no, I'm going to put the value.
Yeah, I think you can keep it just the way it was. But comment out the value, and then let's put in the test to check the value in that field. So this is one of the things that I most commonly use Just Native for.
Okay.
So let me go back to
go
the
ahead.
pin so I can be following
you
again. Yeah, so it's going to be expect, and we want to get the text field. So get by placeholder text, type something. And again, that is something you could save that into a variable if you wanted to not have to get it.
Wait, did it automatically did that?
Yes, and so so props, if you're just using RNTL, I think you would need to call .props.value.
Yeah.
But if you're using Just Native, it gets a little bit more readable. Someone in the chat may know an even better way to do it. But you say just get by placeholder text and then close both parentheses. And then you use the matcher. Well, we had Just Native was not working for us earlier, right? But let's just try it to see.
Yes.
It's to have prop. And so then it would be open parens.
Is it prop or property?
To have prop is what Just Native says. TypeScript saying no.
No, it seems to be working. Okay, so this failed. Wait,
no, it's not
to have prop.
We don't know what's up with their Just Native setup, so let's just go back to .props.value.
Okay,
I think that'll work.
Yeah.
Fine.
To be hello this. Okay, so this should Which library are we using? We're using React Native testing library. Oh, Danny took off. Yeah, thanks, Danny. Hey, Frank. Did not see you there. I might have to save the input off since the placeholder won't be showing several times in a row. Okay, so this has failed because, well, it's undefined. Why? Why is props?
I think it's undefined. So this is actually checking the prop.
Oh, the prop that was passed in.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
Then so if we enable this.
Yes.
It passed. Cool. That's cool. That's cool.
Yeah.
Like it.
So let me say a comment about the props value check there.
Yeah.
That can start if for anyone that used Enzyme back in the day and is familiar with how it has options to dig into the internals of components and check all these implementation details, and buys into the RTL approach like I do, that says like, hey, like let's do black box testing. Let's test the inputs and the outputs. Let's test what the user sees.
Yeah.
You could say, oh man, we're testing a prop. Like a user doesn't see what
It's
a
true.
prop is.
It's true.
Like, yeah. But so in this case, like what we're attempting to check is something the user sees, which is what is the value that's displayed in the text field.
Yeah.
And again, someone in the chat or someone else there on the web might know another way to check the value. I mean, maybe I could even contribute that to the library, like a nice way to say, to have, see the value in the text field. But something that we can check to see what the value is the prop of the component.
What is display value, by the way? Because I'm curious.
Let me see.
Curious if that would allow us, because I agree with you. Now maybe that's already what we're looking for.
Yeah, text input with a matching display value. That might be it.
So that passed. If I comment this out, it should fail.
Yeah.
Yep, it failed.
Cool.
Nice.
Cool. And you know what? That makes me think. I'm very glad to know that. So,
yeah, me too.
And it makes me think of a case where I think I would still use the other approach, and it's this. Where this often comes up for me in my side projects and tutorial projects I've done is when you have a text input that after submitting it, you clear it out.
Yeah.
You delete the value.
Yeah.
And so get by, if you just had one text input on the screen, get by display value empty string could work.
Right.
But when it's like, so maybe a little bit imprecise, maybe a little bit fragile if another text field gets added later.
And
that
so makes
instead,
sense.
being able to say, get by placeholder text, hey, get the type something field, and then check that the value of it is empty string.
That makes sense. Yeah, you're getting what you want.
Yeah. But I mean, this even does suggest though, like when you do have Jest native in there, like expect this to have display value.
Yeah.
That will be more descriptive than props.value. And again, it avoids us getting into the temptation of like, oh, if I'm checking props here, let me just check props all over the place.
Yeah.
You might end up testing implementation details.
I like that.
Let's use an API provided by these test tools.
Yeah.
It's really phrased towards something user facing.
Totally makes sense. So we got that to work, but let's refactor. Let's refactor to MobX state tree. So if I go to, let's say, let's see here, the demo screen, but if I go to our root store, so we're just going to look at the root store, and this is a dumb way to do it. I wouldn't recommend doing this, but we're just going to have a root store property that is our, what did we call this anyway? Sample text. So sample text is going to be a types.string, and it actually is going to be optional because we'll give it a default value of just blank. So it's an optional string.
For my knowledge, does optional, if you don't have optional, empty string is not allowed, or is it just null that's not allowed?
So when you create your root store, which is, let me show you, set up root store. When you create it, you'll see in, let's say, line 40 on the setup root store. I don't know if you're there.
Yes, I am.
You could not pass in an empty object. You would have to tell it what that value is, or else it'll say, hey, you need to provide this. Now,
gotcha. I gotcha.
And you can see that there's a types.optional on the character store above it in the root store itself, saying that, hey, if there is no character, if it's not provided, then just give it a snapshot of an empty object. It'll then generate a character store model from that. Now, what's kind of cool about this is there's actually an alias for this, which is you just give it the string. And so now it'll say, oh, it's a string, it's optional, and the default value is just empty string. So that's it's the same thing. So sample test, sample text is there. We also need an action. So an action of root store, and the action is going to be set sample text, and we're just going to set it. And the reason we have to do this is because properties in an MST model, or in this case as a store, same thing, is just named different. no property can be changed outside of an action. So you have to have a setter, basically. And so if I go back here now, I do want to get the sample text. So I might say const root store equals use stores. And so we're getting the root store. And then wherever I want to use that, so let's say down here in the root store dot sample text here in the value, and then root store dot sample text set sample text. And again, we have to, drop that in on line 162 as well. I don't know if this is going to work. Let's see.
Ooh, might need a provider. We'll see.
Root store set sample text is not a function. Set sample text. Root store set sample text. Let me go to the use stores for a second here. Use context. Oh, I do not like this way of it. I do not like this. There's let's see here. That's restore. There's a better way to do this. I'm not a fan of how we do this. I want to change this. Yeah, so this is a context situation. I'm going to do this in a way that is just really you wouldn't do it this way either, but I'm just going to do it. Root store model dot create. All right. So I'm just going to return this. Okay. Yeah, that needs to change. I'm not a big fan of that. So it did say that it passed. Now I want to make sure that that's actually working how I expect it to work here. So I'm going to go back to this root store, and I'm going to say anytime that this set is, I'm just going to say no. I'm not going to set it. And we should get a failure, and it should be get by text, and it's just not working. So if I go back and I change this back to text, it should pass. So there you go. Yeah. We did find a implementation detail that was not what I wanted, but other than that, the refactor went well because we know that it still works even using a different state management.
Yeah, and you mentioned earlier that I wouldn't really structure it this way and put it directly on the root store. I'd change it, but that again is something that you can refactor later.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
One of the things that test-driven development can really help with is kind of making one decision at a time.
Yep.
It's like let's get it passing, even in the dirtiest way possible. If you're like, oh no, use state is not allowed in our application,
right?
It's like, but well, maybe that's maybe a bridge too far. But it's like, really let me first think about getting it passing, and then let me think about the structure of it, so you don't have to think about everything at once and put everything in your head at once.
Exactly. I think I might be able to, let's see, a root store. Why is it doesn't like this? Oh, I need to import it probably. Yeah. Okay, so this might actually work. And again, this is a situation where, okay, you can play around with it, and yeah, see, it passed. So this is actually closer to what I would do, what I just did. What's really cool about this is that it allows you to inject a different root store if you want. Like you can create a new instance in your test. So if I were to go back to the demo screen and say, oh, I want a different root store here, you could actually then pass in your, let's see here, root store provider. Let's see here. So if I wanted to create a new context like so, actually, let me just do this. You know what? That's not quite right, but there's a way that you can do this where in your test, if you wanted to provide, you could either have it default to the default global state, or in your test, you can wrap it in a provider and it will then switch to that. It'll use that instead. So it's a pretty cool system.
Yeah, and so there's two different temptations you can fall into. One of them is the struggle with okay, I've got to think about everything and get it all just right from the start. And you're like, it's so hard to get going because I got to structure my whole store and things like that. And
Yeah.
the other temptation you can fall into is like, you know what, like it's passing. I don't want to mess with it again. Like, let me not try to improve it.
Yeah.
And so like when you have like whether it's test driven or test after, but when you
Yeah.
have test coverage you can trust,
Right.
you can like, well, let me just play around. Like, let me see what I can do to move around the structure of this. Let me see if
Yeah.
there's a structure for my store that I might like better. And it just the freedom you get from that really allows you to be creative with your code.
Yeah. By the way, Norfelt, it looks like you responded to him, but he said sometimes you also have to dig deep into the props to check if, for example, opacity is what you want. But yeah, it's leaning toward implementation testing, which can be an unhappy path to travel. And then you responded, makes sense when the behavior of the app affects a prop, even a style prop, it might make sense to assert on it. I like this, Josh, because you're very like practical about it all. You're not like extreme, like, no, this is the only way to make it happen. There's obviously dragons in any approach and you got to be aware of them. But sometimes you're just like, you know what? Slap an as any on it and move on.
Yeah, totally. Can I ask a random Visual Studio Code thing before we go on?
Yeah.
Because you've got my attention with this one's so much more minor than AI taking over the world. You have different parentheses and curlies colored differently. Do you have an extension that matches up the colors of them?
I think I do. Let me go. It's been a long time since I set that up. It's in here somewhere, I know. So color highlight is not it.
I could just Google it maybe later, but yeah.
Yeah, no, but I agree. That's a really helpful one. Yeah, I'm not seeing it right now. It also possibly could be the Night Owl thing. Well, actually, I don't know if I'm even using that one, to be honest.
Gotcha.
But yeah, I'm pretty sure I do have an extension that makes it do that.
Cool. I'll look around for it later, see if we can find it. I think it would save me a lot of time.
I like it. My biggest problem is I forget that I have it, and so you see me hunting for like, okay, what to match it up. I forget to look at the color. Like that obviously makes sense. Yeah.
There's you can't human limitations you can't automatically fix.
By the way, my font is a very old font. I think I found it in 2007. And it's called NV Code R. I used it back with the Sublime Text 2 days. And I just got so used to it. I like it a lot. And so I just have rolled with it ever since. NV Code R. It's a fun one.
There was something else about the store state that I wanted to ask about as well. That may be a difference between detox and a test. So let me first say what I know about the difference there, and then you could fill in your use of detox and MST.
Okay.
So when you're doing an RNTL test, you are recreating the world in every test run. In fact, including ours where we had one test per behavior. You're doing a new render and you're creating new JSX from scratch there.
Yeah.
Whereas in detox, you're booting up the app, and there are commands in there, and I think there's commands before detox tests like restart it and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah. But if if your full running app like stores things persistently, that data I would imagine would still be there. And so I think, depending on whatever you say, Jamon, about the approach the all have set up, I would think detox would skew more towards like, stuff continues to be persistent. And so you have to do something explicit if you want to reset the state of the app or manually clear it out, versus you get that for free with RNTL. But if you want that persistence, it could be kind of a downside.
That's a good point.
What does that look like for y'all in your detox tests?
So I'm not sure if we have particularly good detox tests in this one. I should, well, for one thing, I used Expo, so it may have ripped some of that stuff out.
Oh, right. Yeah. Expo's detox is probably not going to run an Expo.
Yeah. I think maybe that is, let me look. Detox. I'm not seeing it. So let's, detox. There is one here. Okay. Yeah. All right. So we have the reload app, and before each thing, we're simply running that reload app. And we aren't actually testing much. Well, in this case, we are await element by ID. It runs, the next screen button, and then make sure that you are loaded up in the demo screen. So that's again, like a end-to-end test here. But yeah, we're running the reload app, which I should go there and look at that. That's in the Expo helpers, because we did actually get detox working on Expo.
Ooh, all right.
So,
I've wanted to do that for a long time, so I may need to crib y'all's setup, or maybe that might be tempts me to finally come into the Ignite fold and be a contributor and a user.
There's some stuff that needs to be changed in Ignite, and I think it's going to be way more impressive once we finish it. But there's still a lot of value here. There's still a lot of value. Yeah, so we're actually just bringing this in from Detox Expo helpers. So that is a thing out there.
I meant to ask, and someone I think mentioned this in somewhere in the early in the chat or maybe in y'all's Slack recently, but what is y'all's current take on Expo? Do you often reach for it in professional work? Do you often, and I learn on that, but we're going to go to CLI for all our professional work. Like what 2022, what is Infinite Red finding on that?
So there's sort of a, like, I feel like the world is not really caught up to where Expo is. And so I don't blame you at all. I just talked to a potential client the other day, and I mentioned using Expo, and he was like, oh no, we can't use Expo on this. There's no way. So, Expo no longer means Expo managed. And that's what everybody thinks of is Expo managed. But I think that's like a 20% of what Expo is now. There is a new thing called Expo Pre-Build, which I think is fantastic. It's really good. And Expo Config something. I don't know. But essentially what they do with that is they know that like you don't necessarily want to be in there like messing with native files internally in like an iOS and Android folder. But you can create a config in your, I think, app.json. I haven't actually used this too much, but then you can regenerate your iOS and Android folders anytime you want, and it will use your configuration to configure them to what you need. So you can have custom code that's brought in. You can have different things happen. So because of that, I think that Expo is a totally valid way to go. You're not limited by not being able to use it because you can't do native code anymore. You can with Expo Pre-Build. Then beyond that, Expo, a big chunk, I would say almost 50% of what Expo is now is EAS, Expo Application Services, which is their build system. And I've used it several times on mostly just side stuff, and it works great. It's really, really good. You can certainly build your own with Fastlane and other things like that, and people do it all the time. But I'm kind of like on board with the idea of, Expo, they're React Native people. They're not just, like random whatever, everything. They're React Native, so they understand React Native really well. And I want to support them as they're building things out like that. And I think that really right now, like if I'm building a project for myself, I'm probably going that route. And in fact, I did. I have an app that I'm building just for my family that I'm using Expo, Expo Pre-Build a little bit, and I'm doing some stuff, native code, things like that. But the problem is convincing people. They're either going to say, oh, it's Expo managed and I don't want that. Okay. Or I don't want to be tied to Expo, because if Expo goes away, where am I? I'm kind of up a creek. Not totally true, but I get it. I get that idea. So I do think, though, that Expo has a place. And even Ignite, if you don't pass in Expo, you're going to get the Expo dependency still, because I want you to be able to use Expo unimodules. Any module that comes from Expo is high quality, well maintained. So I want that to be in there already, even if you're not using any EAS or Expo managed at all. We use Expo third-party libraries wherever we can, because they're just such high quality, third-party. They give away the farm. They give away so much stuff. So I'm a fan of Expo, the company, and I think there's a place for Expo managed, which is what we're actually working on right now, in Expo Go. And then beyond that, I think you're not really limited too much, beyond that. That's my long-winded answer to that question.
Yeah, that totally makes sense to me. And I think it's a matter of helping folks understand what's going on. Like, what are the options? What is the state of things, and what are the trade-offs? Like, and it's a complicated thing. Like when, in the browsers only gives you this much. So like there's no complexity. But in React Native in general, and in Expo in particular, is like, it's all in this areas of gray of like different options you can choose and what are the trade-offs.
Yeah.
Yeah, and even as someone who has been, working in React Native for a long time
Yeah.
and interested in Expo, like the reason I landed on Expo for my side projects was the built-in React Native web support.
Yeah.
That was a big part of what I was doing, and what I screencasted on was about the ability to deploy to mobile and to web.
Yeah.
But I'm using managed over there, and
Yep.
so just like for me, like the complexity of like figuring out where in the docs or demos to see exactly what pre-build does, or even just knowing that pre-build is the category versus what is it called?
Right.
I don't know. Like, I think there's maybe space. I mean, I don't want to criticize them. I can't run a company, but there may be space for them to be like some really clear marketing around, like to help people visualize, like here's what pre-build is.
Yeah.
Here's it's just these 2 steps or whatever, like a 15-minute blog in Expo pre-build or whatever the example is there. But yeah, like I've been telling folks, like, the boundaries have been broken down, but like I just haven't been able to get my head around it. You have, and I think if they can get more people to get their head around it, that's what's gonna open the floodgates.
They lack a really kind of like effective DevRel, really. I think that's one of the things that they're lacking right now. There's some people doing some cool stuff. Dan Stepanov in particular has been really doing some great work over there. But I think that's what they lack right now. They need a Josh or a Jamon over there doing something like that. Moore, sorry about that. I don't know why your messages are disappearing. I don't know if you tried to post in maybe a link or something. It's possible that those got caught in an automatic spam filter. Norfeld says, Josh, do you have a Discord for people who are interested in React Native testing?
He's set me up. He knows I do. Yeah, let me find the link for that real quick.
And I want to, again, I'm going to actually go back to this view. I want to again pitch Josh's book, Outside In React Development. This is specific for React Web, but I think you're going to get value from it, even if you're a React Native developer. Go buy this book. $20, 99 cents if you use the code. It was posted earlier. Sorry. The link. Sorry. I'm going to go find it. link.outsideindev/RN live. Maybe you could drop that in again. Oh, you did.
Yeah,
cool.
We'll do.
Oh, you got the Discord. Perfect.
Yep. There you go.
There's the book. Go check that out. Check out this book. There's some sample chapters, and go check out exactly what's in the book. There's this TDD stuff, and even if you don't do TDD, if you just do testing in general, Josh is a great teacher on this stuff.
Yeah, and that's a great point, Jamon, about not necessarily using TDD. I mean, I would recommend this for folks. Like, you will get value out of learning about TDD or learning from this book in particular, even if you decide to continue to write your tests afterwards. You get into a mindset. TDD is really good at helping you think about the interface of what you're testing. And one of the downsides of just building everything within the whole app is because all the context of all the dependencies is there, it doesn't force you to think about it. And you can be kind of fuzzy in your head in terms of like, well, all the data and all the function calls flow around and it pretty much works out.
Yeah.
But when you isolate a component, is to like, okay, now I can see what the props are that are passed in and what is called back out and what user interactions happen. And so you can visualize it a bit better and you can find out like, oh, like my form is really doing a lot of functionality. Maybe that should be simpler. Maybe my form should just call a callback and that logic should live somewhere else, maybe a standalone JavaScript function. And so by doing TDD, you start to think in those ways. And then as a result, it'll influence the design of your code, how you modularize things and separate responsibilities. And it'll influence how you're able to write tests as well. You won't so much be thinking about like, how do I test this line? Like, how do I get more coverage here?
Yeah.
You'll be thinking about just exactly what RTL has always been pushing folks towards. Thinking about like what are the inputs and what are the outputs. And so even if you know for sure that you won't do TDD long term, you can still learn from kind of getting that tooling.
I 100% agree. Moore asks, have you ever tried React Native OWL? So I want to do a whole stream on this. I really do. Visual regression testing, when I used to do Ruby motion back in the day, there was a thing called motion juxtapose. And by the folks at Terrible Labs, and it was really cool. Honestly, I'm a big fan of visual regression testing. I think that it's one of the places where you can get a lot of value for very little. Like this whole thing right here, const screen equals await take screenshot, and then expect the screen to match the baseline. So it just match. It's like render a whole screen, and then take a screenshot of it, and then compare that, and then tell me in a really like compelling way what changed. Did I move something accidentally that I didn't know that was going to move? You know, you can have a fuzz factor, and you can have different things like that. So I'd love to do a whole stream on that sometime.
Yeah, I just posted in the chat, but I've not heard of React Native Owl before.
Yeah.
I'm so glad for the recommendation, because I've been looking for an opportunity to try out visual regression testing. And without knowing anything about this specific tool, one of the compelling things about visual regression testing in general is, again, it supports refactoring.
Right.
You can extract child components. You can change what contributes to different parts of your screen, and the visual regression test will tell you, hey, the visual output is still the same. Whereas a just snapshot would not.
Exactly. This, in what I have on the screen right now, shows you can see that there was a logo, a new logo, and then you can see the diff. You can see the pink over the top of the other one, which shows you a visual diff. Like Josh said, you're testing the actual output, not just the implementation details of how the JSX is structured. And then it allows you to see this report. And this one actually is less compelling. If I do this, I'm going to show people like if something subtly changes, like you know, like a button moved like 4 pixels, you wouldn't notice that if you're just clicking through the app, but it'll show up in this. All right. Well,
I'll definitely tune in for that one. That's great.
I appreciate so much, Josh. This is fantastic. You sharing your knowledge and coming on with me and exploring. I love hacking on this stuff with great devs like you. I just learned so much. I have not done a lot of React Native testing library, but now I feel like, no big deal. I can do that.
Yeah. Thanks for having me on. It was so fun to work through it together. The stumbling across insights was really fun. Stumbling across mistakes I made is good for humility as well. So I like both sides.
Exactly. And thanks everybody who weighed in. Mur, Frank, Norfelt, really appreciate all your stuff that you were posting in the chat. We also had Danny who had to head out a little early. Just scrolling through, making sure I don't miss anybody. Vivek was there as well on the YouTube side. And I think way back we had I don't want to miss anybody. We had Luis, Ahmed dropped in. Hopefully your exams went well. And Jose dropped in as well. So Darren, Derek, Chanman, Legal. I think I got everybody. Rizwan. Cool. Thanks, everybody. I will be maybe streaming Monday. I haven't even checked my schedule. I think I am. Probably just doing some open source as I often do. And then we'll hit it again next week. But thanks again, Josh. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me, Jamon. Thanks, everyone.
Awesome.